On a hot summer evening in August 1952, during one of the most significant UFO sighting waves in American history, a young housewife and mother named Suzanne Knight experienced something that would remain seared in her memory for years to come. What began as an ordinary night in a house in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, would quickly transform into one of the most detailed close encounter cases on record. It was around 9:30 p.m. when Suzanne was working in the kitchen. It was extremely hot as she went about her evening routine. It was then that she first heard it, a peculiar buzzing sound. It sounded like something pressing against the screen of a kitchen window. The sound repeated several times, each buzz catching her attention more than the last. Thinking it was simply a large insect trapped against the screen, Suzanne approached the window to investigate. What she saw next would challenge everything she thought she knew about the world around her. Through the window, she spotted a bright object descending rapidly at a 45-degree angle. Her immediate thought was that she was witnessing a plane about to crash. She braced herself for the impact that seemed inevitable, but instead of continuing its descent, the object did something no conventional aircraft could do. It came to an abrupt stop and began hovering. The object positioned itself at a right angle to her location, approximately half a city block away and about 300 feet above the ground. Now that it had stopped moving, Suzanne could clearly observe it. What she saw defied conventional explanation. The craft resembled the wingless fuselage of a plane, its exterior a dull silver colour. From the rear of the object, something similar to smoke was emanating, though its exact nature remained unclear. The side of the object facing Suzanne's kitchen window was lined with a series of square windows, through which a brilliant yellow light was shining with an intensity that illuminated the surrounding area. On top of the craft, positioned towards the front and to her left, was a small red light that extended somewhat above the main body of the object. This detail would prove significant when compared to other sightings from the era. But it was what Suzanne observed on the underside of the craft that truly captured her attention. There was an undercarriage that resembled the gondola of a blimp or zeppelin, a separate compartment suspended beneath the main body. This section also contained a row of smaller square windows and was brilliantly aglow with the same yellow light that emanated from the upper windows. Suzanne could make out what appeared to be rows of seats, similar to those found in a theatre. The arrangement suggested this was some kind of passenger or observation area, though for what purpose she could only speculate. Her attention then shifted to the upper windows of the main craft. Through the brilliant yellow glow, she could discern what appeared to be a row of cabinets with slanted tops. The interior seemed organised and purposeful, though unlike any aircraft interior she had ever seen or imagined. It was then that Suzanne noticed she was not alone in this extraordinary moment. Through the upper windows, she could clearly see a figure, a man, as she would later describe him, positioned in the front section of the craft. He was looking straight ahead towards the front of the vessel, which was to her left from her vantage point. In a report to NICAP, or the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, which she would file 15 years later in September 1967, Suzanne wrote, "There was a man in front looking straight ahead towards the front. I couldn't understand what he was looking at so intently, and not moving either. I expected to see a lot of instruments or dials, etc., similar to instrument panels on airplanes, but there were none that I could see. The occupant's appearance was as puzzling as his presence. The bright yellow glow that filled the craft's interior made everything inside appear yellow, including the figure himself. He wore what appeared to be a kind of helmet, and Suzanne noticed that around his arm and the side of his helmet, next to his face, there seemed to be a shadow or a dark line. After observing this extraordinary scene for approximately a minute, Suzanne made a decision that she would later regret. she left the window to telephone the local newspaper, hoping to alert them to this incredible sighting. However, she was unable to get an answer. Whether due to the late hour or simple bad luck, we cannot know. When she returned to the window moments later, the craft was still there, hovering in the same position. But something had changed. The man she had observed was no longer visible, having disappeared from view during her brief absence. More puzzling still, the undercarriage, that gondola-like structure with its theatre seats, was also no longer visible. I thought maybe it had moved up into the fuselage, Suzanne would later reflect, because not even an outline of the car was visible, but it should have been because the street light would have shown it. What happened next would add another layer of strangeness to an already extraordinary encounter. The lights inside the object were abruptly turned off, as if someone had thrown a switch. The craft's exterior immediately began to transform. The dull silver colour gave way to a glowing red, which Suzanne would later compare to the door of an open pot-bellied stove. The transformation didn't stop there. The craft began to rock toward and away from Susan's position, exhibiting a motion unlike any conventional aircraft. Even more peculiar, the entire object took on a wavy appearance, like water running over a rock, like heat waves coming out of an electric toaster, as she would later describe it. Realizing the importance of having another witness to these incredible events, Suzanne began calling for someone else in the house to come and see the object. She particularly hoped her sister would respond to her calls, but while she was looking for her sister and trying to get her attention, the object departed, disappearing from view as mysteriously as it had arrived. The entire incident had lasted approximately 3 minutes, with at least 2 minutes during which Suzanne had the object in clear, unobstructed view from her kitchen window. Despite their relatively brief duration, the level of detail she observed would make her account one of the most comprehensive close encounter reports of the 1950s. In the immediate aftermath of the sighting, Suzanne attempted to share her experience with her sister. However, she made a calculated decision to omit the detail about seeing an occupant inside the craft, certain that this aspect of her story would provoke disbelief. Even without this crucial detail, her sister displayed what Suzanne characterized as disinterest and a certain degree of skepticism. Faced with this reaction from someone close to her, Suzanne made the decision to stop talking about the incident. For years, the memory of that August night remained locked away, shared with no one. It wasn't until several years later that she finally told her husband and children about what she had witnessed. Even then, it would be many more years before her account would reach the broader UFO research community. The report finally came to the attention of NICAP in 1967, a full 15 years after the incident occurred. Despite the passage of time, Suzanne's memory of the events remained remarkably clear and detailed. She completed a full report for the organisation in September of that year, providing investigators with one of the most intriguing occupant sightings of the 1952 UFO wave. Following her initial report, Suzanne was interviewed further by a member of the Capital Area NICAP subcommittee. These additional interviews only served to reinforce the investigators' impression of her credibility. It was noted that Suzanne held a high responsibility job in Prince George's County, adding to her reputation as a reliable and trustworthy witness. The Suzanne Knight encounter stands out not only for its wealth of detail, but also for several specific elements that would appear in other close encounter cases. The transformation of the craft's exterior from metallic to glowing red, the organised interior with apparent seating arrangements, and the presence of a humanoid occupant all became recurring themes in UFO reports of the era and beyond. Particularly striking is the parallel to the Mary Starr case, which we've covered previously on the channel. Both women observed craft with square windows emitting brilliant light. Both saw the exterior of the craft change colour and appearance, and both reported seeing occupants inside. These similarities, occurring years apart with witnesses who had no knowledge of each other's experiences, add an intriguing dimension to both accounts. The fact that Suzanne's sighting occurred during the major UFO wave of 1952, a year that saw an unprecedented number of UFO reports across the United States, places her experience within a broader context of similar encounters. Rather than being an isolated incident, her sighting was part of a larger pattern of close encounters reported by credible witnesses throughout the country. Suzanne's decision to remain silent about her experience for so many years reflects a common pattern among UFO witnesses of the era. Fear of ridicule, concern about professional reputation, and simple uncertainty about how to process such an extraordinary experience often led witnesses to keep their encounters private. That Suzanne eventually chose to share her story and that it stood up to decades of scrutiny speaks to both the profound impact of her experience and her personal integrity. Today, the Suzanne Knight encounter remains one of the most detailed, incredible occupant sightings in UFO history. Her careful observations, clear recollection of events, and willingness to report what she saw, even when it challenged conventional understanding, have provided researchers with valuable data about the close encounter phenomenon. Whether one believes her account represents an actual visit from another world or some other as yet unexplained phenomena, there can be no doubt that on that hot August night in 1952, Suzanne Knight witnessed something truly extraordinary from her kitchen window in Seat Pleasant, Maryland.